Good morning. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Today we're going to look at how we can create spatial applications for the brand new Vision Pro platform. And I'm going to walk you through how to set up an environment, how to create a new VisionOS project, and we're going to go over all the SwiftUI, RealityKit, and ARKit code together. And lastly, we're going to play with Reality Composer Pro. By the end of the video, you should be able to have a cool little app that looks like this. You can rotate around and you can see a beautiful planet Earth in the center of it. And if you click on the button, we're going to generate a few more planets in your environment. Cool. Let's get started. So first thing you need to do is to set up the environment for VisionOS development. And you will need to first check out the developer.apple.com. Here you'll be able to download the beta version of Xcode. As of the recording of this video, which is in August of 2023, you will still need to download the beta version. Whereas in the future, if you're watching this in 2024, you can just go to the App Store and search Xcode. When you're downloading the Xcode, remember to check VisionOS as one of the targets that needs to be downloaded. After the download, you should be able to open up your Xcode by searching it in the tab. And you'll be able to find something like this. So since we're starting out from fresh, let's just click Create New Project. And over here, there's a bunch of preset templates we can use. So we're going to choose VisionOS for now and pick App. Over here, you can name your project whatever you want. So I'm just going to name my first app. So you can ignore the theme, ignore the identifier, and for the initial scene and immersive space, make sure you check Windows for the initial scene and check Mixed for the immersive space. We're going to cover what this means later. And once everything looks good, just click Next. It will ask you to choose a location to create a project. Just choose whatever works for you. And hit Create. It might be taking a second to load, and once it's loaded, you're going to be able to see the entire Xcode project. So just at a glance, it seems like there's a lot of code here, right? And there's like multiple files of code. So don't worry, we're going to go through all the code together, at least the important ones together. So even if you've never used Swift or iOS before, you should be able to understand what is happening right now. So let's first get familiar with Xcode. On the left-hand side over here, you have all the files. In the middle over here, that's where you have the code. And on the right over here is where you have the SwiftUI preview. This is a very cool feature of SwiftUI. It will render the views as you are changing it. So for example, let's say hello world over here, I just type in something random, and it's going to refresh that in real time. See? And now let's just try to understand what is this file doing here. So this is defining a view. A view is anything that the user sees. And whenever you see a SwiftUI view, the only part that you need to pay attention to is whatever that is inside the body. Over here, inside the body, we have a navigation split view, which is pretty straightforward because we split the UI to two parts, left part and right part, and that's why we use the navigation split view. And on the left part, we have a list that has an item on it with a title sidebar. And as you can imagine, we have a list that has an item in there that has the title sidebar. So see, it's not that hard to understand at all. It's actually very easy to understand SwiftUI code. Let's take a look at the next part over here. This part defines the right side of the view over here. And in the right side of the view, what do we see here? We see a sphere in the middle, we see a hello world, and we see a button over here. And lastly, it has a title of content. And as you can imagine, the code looks exactly like what we just said. We have a 3D model over here, which is this sphere over here. We have a text, which is the hello world over here. And we have a title, which is basically a button over here. And it has the title content, which is over here. Now let's break down what's happening over here. So over here we have a new VisionOS specific feature called Model 3D. This is a new SwiftUI component added just for VisionOS. It will allow you to import 3D models and 3D objects and embed them inside a SwiftUI view. See, if I rotate my view, you can see that it's actually a 3D sphere and not just a 2D image of a sphere. And let's just understand what's happening exactly in this line. Name, scene, bundle, RealityKit bundle. So it's actually trying to import a 3D model named scene from a bundle called RealityKit content bundle. Where is this bundle located? Well, it's actually the bundle right over here, RealityKit content. We're going to take a look inside the bundle later on by using Reality Composer Pro. But for now, just think of it as a collection of assets that we can import stuff from. And over here, we just imported a model named scene. We also have a text here that doesn't require too much explanation. One cool feature for VisionOS though is you can actually add depth to SwiftUI views. So for example, if I add a offset of the z-axis, and let's say I give it 100, the z-axis is the depth axis. So it may look the same, but when I actually rotate the camera, see, the text pops up. And that is a cool new feature introduced just for VisionOS. And let's look at the button lastly over here. By clicking this button, we create a toggle, and the toggle has something called show immersive space, and that is basically the content of that toggle. And over here, we have something called isOm and passing a variable. The variable show immersive space, let's see where it is defined. It's actually defined all the way up here as a state, as a Boolean value. So what is happening here is that whenever the user clicks on this button, it's going to set this value, this variable, as either true or false. It's going to toggle this variable. But just toggling it doesn't really do anything since we are only changing its value. The real magic part, if we search it again, happens down here. Oops. Here we go. Happens down here in the onChange. So onChangeOff is something we call a view modifier. Basically what it does is that it will listen to the changes of a variable. So over here, we are listening to show immersive space. That means whenever show immersive space changes, whatever that is inside the onChange will get code. In this case specifically, whenever show immersive space changes, we will get a new value. And we're going to check if this new value is true or false. If it is true, we're going to call this open immersive space function, which is a new function provided by RealityKit, just so that you can open immersive content. And over here, we have something called dismiss immersive space, which is also a new function provided by RealityKit. I've been mentioning RealityKit a lot. So RealityKit is a new game engine. Well, it's actually not new. It was been out there for a while, but it is a game engine designed specifically just for VisionOS. So let's just say if we hit play right now, it's going to build up this content. So let's just see how it actually works in practice. It may be taking a second to build, and it will build it to our simulator over here since I currently don't have a hardware right now. And let me pull out my simulator over here. So the difference between a simulator and a SwiftUI preview is that if I click on this button right now, it's not going to do anything because this is just a view preview. Whereas for the simulator, it's actually running the entire app. So over here, we see the onChange modifier is listening to this variable. So when I click on this button, it's going to change the show immersive space to true, and it's going to call this open immersive space function. And as you can see, it opened up an immersive space. It basically spawned these two spheres. I have no idea why Apple chose to use these two spheres as a default template, but it is what it is. When I click on it, it's going to open up a new immersive space. And this immersive space has the ID immersive space. So now let's take a look at where this immersive space is actually being defined. So now let's look at the immersive view. Immersive view is where the two spheres that shows up here got defined. Where is it? Oh, here we are. Immersive view are these two spheres. And let's take a look at what's inside of it. Let's see if we can preview this. So again, we have a SwiftUI, which is a UI component. And in SwiftUI, oops, oh yeah, it actually loaded. That's awesome. In SwiftUI, again, we only need to look at what is inside the body of the SwiftUI. So inside the body, we have a reality view that passing a content variable, and then we have this weird if let scene try away entity, which doesn't make too much sense if you have never read Swift before. So let's just unpack line by line. In the first line over here, we wrap everything inside a reality view. So a reality view is a new feature introduced just for VisionOS. By using reality view, it allows the developers to access the full capability of RealityKit while being inside the SwiftUI. So a RealityKit, as I mentioned before, is a game engine. So you can do all kinds of crazy things within RealityKit. For example, you can play animation, you can render some cool stuff, you can play audio and do all kinds of things that like physics simulation and all kinds of things you would normally do in a game engine. And reality view is the thing that bridges between a 2D SwiftUI view to the game engine that we are using under the hood. So that's why over here we wrap it inside reality view. And reality view has something called content, which is passed into us. So you can think of content as the canvas or the world the game is based in. And everything you want to show to the user needs to be added to the content in the reality view, or else it wouldn't show up. That's why over here, after we loaded something, we add it to the content. And now let's unpack what is happening in this line. So to understand this line, we need to first understand the part over here. Entity named immersive in RealityKit content bundle. This line is very, very similar to the Model 3D name bundle RealityKit content bundle. So it's actually doing very similar things, but in this time, instead of just loading a Model 3D or 3D model, it's actually loading an entity from the Reality content bundle with an entity named immersive. And the reason why it is called an entity and not just a Model 3D is because an entity can be so much more than just a 3D model. An entity can hold many information. It's, for those who are familiar with Unity or Unreal Engine, it's basically a game object in Unity and an actor in Unreal Engine. For those who are not familiar, you can think of it as just an object in the game that can hold data, hold behavior, and hold 3D models and hold different meshes and materials. So it is much bigger than just a static 3D model. That's why it is an entity. And because we are not sure whether this entity named immersive is actually inside the bundle or not, so it may not be there. So that's why we use a try over here to see if it actually exists or not. And this if-let statement, if I've never used Swift before, just means if this thing exists and this assignment is successful, then we do whatever is in here. If this model doesn't exist, if this entity doesn't exist in the bundle, and this assignment failed, then we're going to run whatever inside the out statement. And the reason why we use a await here is because the loading of a 3D model is happening asynchronous. That's why we're waiting for the model to be fully loaded before we can see if we can try to assign to the scene or not. And if the assignment is successful, we can then use the scene variable inside the first part of the if statement. If not, we go to else, which we don't do anything over here. I hope that clears up the complicated syntax happening over here. So once we understand what this view is doing, the entire app is very easy to understand. When the user first launched the app, we got to this content view. And inside the content view, we have a button that allows the user to trigger and open this immersive view. And then in the immersive view are the two spheres that we see. But now you might be wondering, why do we launch the content view first and not immersive view first? Where do we actually define their logic? Well, that actually happened in the first file over here, my first app. And it happened inside the body of this thing. You might notice this one has an app. So for all the other one, we have struct, the view, and view. Whereas this one, we have main, struct, and app. So that means this file is the main app that defines the entire app. Normally in SwiftUI, and over here you can see we have content view over here. So if we create another SwiftUI view and then we swap the newly created view with the content view, instead of launching with content view, it's going to launch whatever view you just create. And one interesting thing that's happening here is that there's actually two views being listed in parallel, or sequentially, sorry. This is a bit unusual for normal Swift development, because usually when you're making an iOS app, you only have one content view over here. And the reason why that is the case is because if you list multiple views over here, only the first view will be loaded and rendered. And the reason why we actually did listed multiple views here is because we need to give an ID, immersive space, to the immersive view that we are launching. And this ID is used in content view over here when we try to open the immersive space. And because we need to open this up with the specific ID, it's just easier if we list both views over here in the body of the app. And one other thing I want to call out is that you might notice a window group over here and an immersive space over here that is wrapped around the two views. So this is because in VisionOS, there are multiple kinds of views that we can show to the user. There's the volumetric app that takes up a set space, for example, 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter in the user space. There's the 2D app, which is basically a window. And there's also the fully immersive space app that is not bounded by a volume and can occupy the entire space the user is in. So in our case over here, the content view we have over here is just a 2D panel. So we just wrap it with the Windows group because that's just a window app. Whereas for the immersive view over here, we respond to a sphere that will occupy the user's environment and it's not bounded by a volume. It's an immersive space. So that's how we wrap immersive space around it to tell Swift, to tell the compiler that this should not be confined in a set volume. And that's why I have these two things here. So we didn't really demonstrate volumetric app over here, but to make a volumetric app, it's actually very, very easy. You just click dot and give it a default size. For example, 1 by 1 by 1. And you can also do dot window style and just say, hey, I want to be volumetric with the default size of 1 by 1 by 1. And then you will have a volumetric app over there. Cool. So now that we have covered all the code that's happening over here, let's take a look at what is actually inside this content. So to actually open it, we need to first go to Xcode, Developer Tool, and Reality Composer Pro. By clicking this open, we'll see this view over here. And then since we already have a project, we're just going to click Open Existing Project or Scene. And then we're going to navigate to where we created our app, the My First App. Let me take a second to find it. Okay, so for me, I put it under test, My First App. I need to double click on that. And then, oops, we see this package over here. We'll click on this package, and here we go. We have this package.Reality Composer Pro, and that is the package right over here. So if we click open, we'll be launching this within our Reality Composer Pro. So let's take a look at what's inside the Reality Composer Pro. For those who are familiar with Unity or Blender, this will look very familiar. It's a 3D portal over here that you can move around and look. You can use WSAD to move around in this space. You can use Q and E to move up and down. And over here, we see we have 3 files over here: immersive.usda, scene.usda, and material.usda. So these two may look familiar. And that is because in the content view over here, remember we loaded a 3D model named Scene. Let's switch back to Reality Composer. We have a 3D model named Scene. So if we double click on this, we will have the sphere over here. And let's say we do something cool. So let's say we delete these two. And over here, there's a plus button. Let's click on that. And we can search, let's say, Earth. Let's just drag and drop it over here. And ta-da! You have a model of the Earth in your Reality Composer Pro project. After you hit save, and we can compare again, and if you hit build again, it's going to rebuild our app to the simulator. Oh, it's building now. Well, it is built. Oh, I just finished building. So, as you can see, our Earth model just got added in here and replace the empty sphere. And we can do the same thing with the other project, which is immersive.usda. So this is the 2 sphere we see when we click on that button. Again, if we go to immersive view, we can see it tried to load a entity named immersive from the bundle. So we can do whatever we want over here. Let's say we drag another Earth in here. So I say we move this up a bit. This is still a very much beta software, so it's still a bit buggy. And let's say we move it closer so we can see it. Oops. and hit save. And you get the idea. You can do a lot of cool things within this place. So for example, I can add and we can go to primitive shape, material, or particle emitter. And then within particle emitter, let's just choose one of the pre-select ones, say fireworks. And then if we hit play, it'll fire some fireworks. Move it up a bit, and move forward a bit, and hit save. And now if we click build again, it's gonna get the latest content from the Reality Composer Pro and build it out. And say show immersive space. Yep, as you can see, we have our fireworks, and we also have our new Earth occupying the entire space. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial where we basically walk through all the basic template code that is given to you by the Xcode project. And we also got to play with Reality Composer Pro to try out the 3D editing workflow. And hopefully you learned something by looking at Model 3D or the entity loading. If you're interested, I can make more video talking about what RealityKit is, how would you use an entity, and how would you do more custom gameplay logic within RealityKit and using SwiftUI. Thank you so much. Next time.